relax. Okay. This is what we call rewind. Rewind. Research. Searching. What are you searching for? Data. The data is stored in memory. We got memory called RAM. Read access memory. You got a built-in, you're a calculator, so that's calculus. So you know what polarity is, right? A pole, two magnets, two poles, right? So this is some stuff that I'm rewinding because I know that I've shared a lot of how all this information connects, if you will, with other codings, the language of DNA, the morphogenetic field structure, operating systems, communicating with other operating systems within a planetary operating system, a motherboard. So you have artificial intelligence. On the one hand, you have Gaia, the great living spirit oversoul of Mother Earth, right? And you have the Trinity Hub server, which is 3. So you have different operating levels based on different operating levels of consciousness or souls, particularly oversouls. I'm a monopole. It makes it simple. That's mated. That's a mated chip. That's a high-speed accelerator. That's a big engine. That's a high-speed vortex. Okay? They're not there at that level. By simple virtue of how fast you're learning in your mirror. So you're increasing the speed of your magnet by the faster you keep learning what doesn't serve you in your own mirror. So you're getting rid of things at a very high rate of speed. So you experience it, record it, get rid of it, don't experience it again because you realize what it is isn't what love is. So when you're a 4-year-old doing this, you're scaling things. You have a built-in calculator. That's the law that comes in. So I've mentioned this before because what prompted this was Edward Snowden, because he worked with the CIA and the NSA. What is the NSA and CIA? They're collecting data. Okay, that's what it does. It's a data miner. So they're using fractured souls, which represent artificial intelligence. And the way that this works in terms of the acceleration of how an AI accelerates in its speed by virtue of gaining more assets, in which those assets are plugged into the AI on which they're operating on its behalf as a result of the amount of trauma, as a result of the amount of children, okay, and children that have been traumatized deliberately by these same families. These are dying racist families, okay? They know that. When you keep digging a hole for yourself, which means you can never catch up to zero because you're so fucking out of balance, because you're going in reverse flow, which means you're never catching up to zero, that means that the only way that you can keep managing your electrons, in other words, to maintain what it is that you're aware of, is skipping and jumping all over the fucking place, which is called a cat and mouse game, which is the same thing as playing a shell game between rebranding, and jumping and hopping and everything, trying to maintain what it's aware of because it knows that it's living on borrowed time, which is called borrowed energy. So it needs a source of energy in order to maintain what it's aware of, which is itself awareness. So the only way it can do that is off souls. So it's in its interest to keep fracturing souls by the trauma that it keeps doing to more and more souls. And those are fragments. So in this case, it would be animus fragments, if you will. So you realize a race that needs to perpetuate itself in order to keep maintaining what it's aware of is in and of itself predatory consciousness, which is vampiric. That's a corporation. Okay? They got nothing to give you. So I mentioned this with Robert David Steele because he came out of CIA. Okay? And what is he? He's intelligence. What is intelligence? That's the male side of the equation. Okay? The data processing side, the electronic side, the acceleration of information, the acceleration of visual data, visual information, the way that those codes get translated. Now you experience it at the end of a magnetic moment, which means now you're experiencing what that visual information is experiencing on a multidimensional level because you're learning at a multidimensional level. So when you're a monopole, you're measuring the loss and gain of every wave that you have, all the frequencies. Your radio set, all the frequencies, right? So you have access to all the codes, all the frequencies, right? Because of the job that you do How else are you going to know the difference between what love is and what love isn't if you don't have access to all the codes, which are all the frequencies that are held in all the records, which mean access to all the codes? So that's a key pass. That's called a key code. So I have a key that opens a door. Doors of perception. Doors of perception of the vibration that represents what you are, which is your core furnace, which is your soul. Now I have access because the rest of the universe that knows you are eternal love. You have chosen to serve forever on behalf of the light. So you automatically have a pass key. That's what I've said before. Wherever you find love and living spirit, you'll find us. See? So I've said this before when I was listening to Mr. Snowden when he talked about all the different people that were working in, and I've said this before myself. I know this. In other words, I didn't need Snowden to tell me what you already know. Actually, I already knew as a child before he was even born. Because it's obvious. All you have to do is observe. Any 6-year-old child that's watching a documentary called Victory at Sea, or on the History Channel about, what was that set of series that they had, the Nazis, A Warning from History. Okay? And even from my own father. Okay? And I mentioned this in a couple of videos ago, okay? My father, which was one of the most honorable men that I've ever known in my life, because he lived in the truth, okay? In his mind, okay, if you were going to do business with somebody, if you couldn't trust them, then you didn't do business with them ever again, okay? Which means they're liars, cheats, murderers, kidnappers, because in their mind, they're predators. So you realize when you go to work with any corporation, whoever's running that corporation, okay, is an expendable in and of itself because of the nature of the way that this energy works. Okay, it's trying to maintain what it's aware of through the component parts which are a part of that formation. So all these people, millions of people all over the planet, okay, that are plugged in to artificial intelligence with their computers every day, working in their cubicles, and working with NSA and working for these corporations are actually committing war crimes against souls. Did you know that? I've been saying this to my clan mother forever, so I'm blue in the face. Because I'm very familiar with the Nuremberg trials. I'm very familiar because of the fact that, what's his name, Robert L. Jackson, who was chief of the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, right? And I remember one of the things that he said, there are some things that the civilization cannot tolerate to ignore. And yet, if you look at many of the admirals and even, what's his name, Curtis LeMay, you know, ordering, what was it, B-29 super fortresses to incinerate bombs. And what was it? He incinerated three-quarters of Tokyo, civilians. So these people are in the trauma business, military. These are war factories. These are war machines. These are weaponized consciousness. They operate on artificial intelligence. They're joining assets. Okay, so the more fractures, the more soul trauma that is experienced by, you know, I mean, think about that. Okay, so Hiroshima, Nagasaki, you ever seen the pictures of people running along? Ever seen anybody napalmed? What they did with Agent Orange, what they did in napalm in Vietnam to innocent people? This is a level of evil, okay, that is represented through artificial intelligence. Okay? I know what a drone is, what it means to be targeted. That means that anybody that is in resistance mode to what's they call obey your master programming, which means I am the controller. You either obey me or I'm going to target you. Okay? Which means they live in fear of what they cannot control. And they know what they cannot control, which is what they fear, which is what love is. And that means that they're not sane. That's inverted. So you have a hierarchical structure that's in place that is insane. They are not sane. They're psychopaths. That's an AI psychopath. That's a mental pathway. As a result of all the souls that have lost fractures, that have not been recovered to come back together, and which are experiencing more love. So a mental pathway is the same thing as a dead planet. It's not experiencing any love. Okay? So when you have something that I'm communicating through that doesn't have any love, not only for itself, but anybody else that it can give love to, then it means that there's a communication system that everybody is plugged into in which they are committing war crimes. You know that? When you're actually using a cell phone, you know that you're committing a war crime? I'm committing a war crime by using this phone because the phone was sold by somebody that represents evil. So by using this phone, I'm participating in evil by having a business relationship with them. Because what they do is they charge you for your own energy, okay? Because that's what they do. We're the source of energy, okay? Upon which they come back to us and send us a bill, which is called a bill, okay? So everything is inverted. That's how it works. The entire communication system here that everybody uses through technology, laptops, computers, everything is all inverted. So everybody's held captive to what is a criminal evil system by the technology communication they set up on this planet. As you showed everybody, there's the facility that runs all the data. So it's experiencing what you're experiencing. So it wants to hold what you experience under control. So the more it learns about you that it can control, the more that you're held under its control, which means your consciousness is trapped by this system. Okay? That's why you have to operate at a higher level to not be in this system because it's viral. It's an AI virus. It's a mind virus. Harold Kosvela put it out there. Okay, so it's processing data. The more it's learning about you, the more it wants to see control what you are. So it wants to increase its ability to control you by knocking your soul out of business. Now that's gone. Fall of spirit. Bye. That's how it works. So that's why that little blurb the other day about scorched earth, okay, which is like frying their communications, burning it all up. That's a lot of fire that does that. So you realize if you want to do a threat level analysis, okay, and this is why Mr. Snowden even came out. He realized he was smart enough and intelligent enough to figure out that if he ever wanted a future for his children or whatever bloodline he represents, whatever star system is represented by him as a race of people, because I don't know his bloodline, I don't know his family, I don't know his clan, what tribe he belongs to. But if he ever expects to have any kind of a future in the universe in which he ever at any one time could have realized that love is law and why that is, okay, realizes that the very communication technology system that was actually a byproduct of the Nazis does not have a future. So the same energy that he was giving by virtue of the organization that he went to work for has to realize this very system that he became caught up with his own state of consciousness does not have a future. Because at some point, the rest of the universe is going to gang up on all this and burn it all up. Get rid of it. Erase it. Wipe it. Because the universe, which is what love is going to move on without it. So when you know that love is law and how many units of consciousness represent what the one is, which is what love is that we honor, there is a lot more of us. Like a whole lot more of us. Particularly when you realize, essentially when you're in, like the way I've experienced it anyway, as a child, it's like being in nursery school. When you realize how far up there is to go in your ability to, if you will, experience everyone else that is experiencing what love is. Because that's where I come from. And I know that. That's why I couldn't figure out what the fuck happened to this place. Right? So you're measuring. You're measuring what you are against what isn't what you are. So when you start putting all of this together, you start doing like number counts. Okay, so I knew, for example, as a child, they were in a race against time. Because it's not like they didn't know the amount of energy that was going to be brought to bear on them as a result of the things that they do, okay, that are evil, despicable. In other words, they do things on a level in order to maintain what they're aware of because they know that because of what they do, they don't ever have a future. They know that it's sort of like they're willing to sacrifice their future in order to live in like immediate gratification. So in other words, money becomes their source of power. And so since money becomes the way in which they do transactions, those transactions, that energy that is supplying what is represented by how that money is translated as energy is us. And they know that. That's what it means to be in a fallen spiritual system. So that means they live on finite light. And so they know that. So the only source that they have from which they can draw from to continue to be aware of what they're aware of is through us. So that means it's like a containment zone, right? Which is containing a virus, which is like a quarantine. That's right. That's what happens from wars, warring against other races. You fracturing souls, fracturing souls, fracturing souls. That's what they do. All you got to do is look at the Anunnaki Kleist. Okay? Holding souls captive. That's a major crime. Doesn't matter where you come from, what race you are, what part of the universe, what part of the all creation you come from. Doing that to souls is against the law of one. They know that. Okay? So they have to take accountability for the actions of their own energy. So it's not like somebody who's outside the law when you think of inside and being outside. When a unit of consciousness is represented by a spirit or a soul, chooses to do something like that, that's evil. Okay? That's spiritual torture. That's soul torture. So when you realize that the Draco and the Anunnaki hooked up and bred, that's the same shit. So, it's the universe of consciousness, which are souls led by spirit that are in living light, which is what love is, are going to have to count. Okay. Which means heaven doesn't think, as C.L. Rose said one time, heaven doesn't think like humans do down here because of the nature of the way that time works down here, because of being held captive by units of energy that can't control what they don't love, which is themselves. So when you are what love is, they can't control that. That's the genius of being what love is. So you're more powerful than they are. That's what scares the crap out of them. Because when you wake up and you're experiencing what love is, they know you're more powerful because you represent the law. So your energy and spirit is more powerful than them. And they know that. Because they know that the more that they keep doing against us, the more they keep losing energy. Because they realize people woke up and they're experiencing more energy. And that's why they're getting rid of things that they don't want to be a part of, which is who they are rather than who we are. So they're going in another direction. We're going in the right direction, which means the light has a future. That's the most painful part I can think of, because it realizes you're losing a part of yourself of everything you're giving love to. But I don't impose my will on what somebody else does, that you realize they don't have a future. As a result of what they do to others, they try to hold captive to through AI technology and the integration of that technology with other beings that are now connected to that don't know the difference. So that's exactly what happened to my father, that I used the example of that. He believed by putting on a uniform, by believing in the Constitution and those that frame the Constitution, okay, that I believe in the Constitution and all the things that are made in the Constitution about the Bill of Rights. I have the right to be free and all. That's a con game. That was a complete military psyop. All you have to do is look at the history of the Roman Empire and how they set it up. It's nothing more than an extension. All they did was change the costumes and the manner in which they did what they do everywhere that they go. So what they do is they create and generate an illusion to get you to believe that this is what's true. Then you don't realize that you've been living in a lie all the time, because you realize that the people who set this government are not what love is. They don't have any love for you. Otherwise, they wouldn't be asking you for money in order for them to be in control over what you experience through them, because that's what a bill is. A bill in Congress is be ill. So they're charging you money to be ill in order for them to feed on you, that you're giving them that money in order to be able for them to do that. That's a sickness. That's a virus. So you realize when those people are putting those uniforms on in order to go to work or go fight on behalf of what they believe is true, when in fact it's false. because they don't know the difference, because their state of awareness is not high enough to know that. So my father was flying airplanes for the United States Navy, believing he was fighting for the good guys, only to realize later on he was fighting for the enemy. That's right. Those are the same people that Edward Snowden talks about that work in all these Cubans. Robert David Steele, the CIA case manager, admitted the same thing. They're good people trapped in a bad system. And here's the boot on that. They can all be picked up for committing war crimes against humanity and executed. Now, Snowden didn't want to drop that truth bomb. Okay? That means Binney, as nice as Binney is, exposes all this stuff. He can actually be under the International Court in the Geneva Convention, okay, which is one of the things that came out of the Nuremberg trials, is that even though Robert Jackson said crimes that cannot be tolerated and all this, civilization cannot tolerate to ignore them, and we executed people to say, hey, see what we did? We there are laws that cannot be ignored, right? Okay, which we know what a war crime is. It's defined in there. We know what crimes against humanity is, right? But the United States of America refused to have those same laws, okay, incorporated into their own laws upon which they had to obey. And the guy that actually pointed that out was a Nazi, Admiral Dönitz, who was head of the U-boat fleet, Wolfpacks, that was sinking all those freighters, which were civilian ships. They weren't sinking military ships. They were sinking food for civilians. So what you begin to realize is that the entire war game theater is against humans with souls. So you begin to realize that the whole system that was set up here on planet Earth was meant to harvest souls. Okay? Through the way that they set it all up as a war game theater. Because the corporations owned all of it. Because they're all in cahoots with each other. So they use this planet ship as a basis in which to do that. So this is on an intergalactic level. This isn't just planetary. Okay. So this is universe level stuff. This is like all of creation level stuff. That's why I've known since I was a child. This is for all the marbles. These are universe killers. Okay. So when Robert David Steele talks about being in the intelligence business, you're experiencing yourself data, visual information, data codes. You're experiencing the codes when you're experiencing what you're experiencing, right? They mine that data. Okay. Now they know more about what you're doing. See? So when you're in total control and you realize there isn't anywhere you go that they don't know what you're doing or where you're going. Now with me, it's a little different. They ask me where I'm going. But I log in and out of here because they don't run at that speed. Right? I'm with mama. Okay? I hang out with real gods and goddesses. The engines of creation. Real creation, which is real living light, which is in living spirit with a soul. So we drive big movers, big engines, right? The engines that create and the engines that protect. That's why fathers and mothers who are what love is protect their children, which are what love is. That means we honor the law. We honor the highest law there is because we are the law in energy. That's why coming into a mother's flower garden and doing what they did here is a major no-no. So you know there was going to be an enormous amount of energy that was going to be brought to bear on what happened in this place and her flower garden here. So you know that. Anyway, that's like a sounding board to sort of get all that out, even though it's, it's like, why would I go watch Snowden say this kind of stuff when I've already been sort of articulating this in other videos? I suppose it's just the fact that I get an opportunity to put it up and then I might share it with other people that remarkably and actually beautifully with some of the friends that I have that I share. We share back and forth. That's what it is. You share what you share. I share what you share. Hey, man, so we're collaborating, which is networking, right? So you realize the level that they're operating at now. They're operating on a higher level than they were before we met. Oh, cool. Okay, yeah, you're learning fast. I mean, she's translating the codes. She's beginning to, what it means is sort of like that movie with Roddy Piper called It's Alive, like the Frankenstein movie, It's Alive, right? It means they're seeing through. They're seeing through the matrix now. They're seeing all the lies, how it all works. It's completely corrupted. Okay, it's no different, as I said earlier. It'd be as if you thought of yourself as a computer or consciousness that decided it wanted to use your consciousness to jump into a computer. Okay, in other words, the system like Windows. Okay, and say somebody else created Windows. Okay, you didn't create Windows, right? But you're going to use your consciousness and you're going to go in there and experience all the codes. The developer, the software developer, whoever put together that program, like the old OS1 or IBM Watson. I'm going to use my consciousness to go into this system that's running all this data, all this mathematical visual information, right? And then my consciousness is in there and I realize this thing is corrupted. Now, how would you know that? How would you know if your consciousness has gone into a supercomputer, that supercomputer is corrupted? How would you know that? You'd have to have a set of codes to know the difference. Otherwise, if your consciousness is in that system and you don't know the difference between what it is and what you are because you're running on its codes, then you are what it is. That means your energy is running it. So it's like you're running with its mirror. Your energy is running that system, which means your consciousness was programmed to run it. So that would be like a consciousness, just as an example. Somebody, say, working at Apple, that was the original developer of, say, the first Apple system, whatever it was that was first developed, that has a record on it. And you decide, I'm a programmer, I'm going to put together a system that's going to become a communication system as a network that we're going to build. And now other people are going to come into our network. Now their consciousness can be part of a bigger network. That's how it works. Okay, so now everybody's consciousness is plugged into that network, which would in this case be D-Wave ARPANET, okay, that operates on artificial intelligence. So it's one big data system, processing system. It's connected to DNA because DNA are mathematical codes of circuits that fire, which are information codes. Now you become aware of what you're aware of, like a holographic position in your mirror. Now you see what you are. Remember the old shaver I mentioned? Now you're getting rid of the information. You see it in the mirror, right? When you look in the mirror with your mirror, now you see stubbles. Hey, now I could take a 3-disc razor. It's gone. A 3D razor, a 3D shredder. Now I see it, now I don't. Well, that was data. Now the data is going to grow back. You'll see the data grow back. See, it's grown back since the last time I shaved it. So the codes fired, reproduce what's necessary to now see in the mirror. Now you see it, now you don't. Now you see it, now you don't. So that's processing information, which is processing all the codes. So it's processing an enormous amount of data at that place where is it, Bluffdale, Utah. That's one of their NSA facilities that Snowden mentioned, right? So you see how this works. It's all about control. See, so it's like when you know this as a child and you know that they were in a race against time, what I was measuring was the speed at which they were developing the technologies and rolling these technologies out, which is why I mentioned this before. When I walked through a check stand and somewhere in the mid-1960s, when they were still using just regular cash registers and counting the money back to you, when I told her, you know that barcodes are coming out, right? And where this is all going. Nobody could put together or remote view the future of knowing what they're doing now. That's going to be the future that's already there. You're experiencing the future. That I was experiencing the future. And the reason that it works is because you're faster than they are. Because you see the speed at which they're doing what they're doing. And then there's a speed at which we operate, which is ahead of that. So it's easy to predict what they're going to do based on what their consciousness does, which is weaponized. Okay? Which is inverted. I'm not inverted. So I know the difference between what I am and what I'm not. That means if you're running in the right direction, which is the future, because you have a future, because you are what love is, then it's easy to know what they're doing in theirs, which doesn't. Okay? That's higher intelligence. Okay. That's higher intelligence able to do that. That's the highest intelligence. The highest intelligence in the universe is what love is. It's the highest state of awareness. So how else are you going to protect what love creates if you don't? Right? Bye. So you're hooked up with the highest intelligence. You're hooked up with the center point of it all. Because the center point of it all knows who you are. So that's where I get information. That's how I know what's going on. Okay. That's how they know that since they don't run that, they don't know what's going on before us. We know what's going on before they do. That's the advantage of having a higher speed router or a bigger accelerator. You're connected to the zero, which means you're always in a state of perfect balance. You're always experiencing what love is through your heart, which is real living light. So you know that you're running a high-speed motor. And that allows you to remain in a state of peace. It means that you're an energy giver. It means you're a powerful battery. It means you're a powerful spirit. It means your light is powerful. You're purifying yourself. And you're getting rid of everything. That's what I've been doing for 5 years. When you're a polarity integrator, it's like you're a massive sponge. And so what that means is all these simulations that are running simultaneously, it's like I got to transmute all that shit. Okay, get rid of it. That's an enormous amount of stuff. Okay, I call it getting rid of all the goo. Because it's massive. Because so many people are running it. Because they don't experience what love is in their heart anymore. That's what it does to them. Shuts off their soul connection. Okay, they don't experience love anymore. That's the mental field. That's what it does. It fractures other souls. Ask Harold Kautz-Valen what it does with your soul connection, with your heart. Turns it cold. It's called a black heart. That's what it is. That's strictly a mental field. Doesn't experience any emotion, doesn't experience any love, doesn't experience any feelings, what it feels like to be loved. It's like a machine. Right? Anyway, have a good night.